transitioning to the radio broadcasting piece of everything, I mean, it's a really interesting space because although there's definitely cord cutting happening, the ratings were down a little bit this year in the NBA, and that can most likely be attributed to just an influx of sports and habits changing based on the pandemic. I mean, there's many things, but how does your role in radio kind of play into the future of just sports consumption? And do you think that with people maybe on the road a little bit less because of the pandemic, do you think that could hurt, or do you think that could actually help with kind of the old-fashioned radio listener at home, if that's still something that you find?
Well, I mean, the way I look at it is I've got a job to do. And obviously, selfishly, we want as many listeners on radio as we possibly can get. But I look at it this way. When I do a radio game, it's a 2.5 hour to 3 hour infomercial for my team. And I want the integrity of calling a game for the Chicago Bulls. And I have to report what I see on the floor. Do I want the Bulls to win? Absolutely. I want them to go 82-0. I want them to win the NBA championship. Obviously, that's not, plausible. And so we call a game. And I want people to understand when they're listening that there is intelligence, there is knowledge, there is passion, there is clarity, and there's entertainment. And so I don't know how many people listen, but I can't deal with that, because once that light bulb goes on and I get that cue from the engineer, I have responsibility and accountability to do the best job I can. So things are changing, I get it, but I want to make sure that people will say, hey, the ball game's on, I got to listen to Chuck and Bill and find out what's happening to our Bulls. In addition, what I did, and I did this in Toronto and I carried it over to the Bulls, is that we're very big on the digital world. And so we try and put as much as we can on social media before the game, after the game. I write a daily column during the season every day. Chuck checks in, where we give synopsis on the game, NBA news and information, scores. So if people want to find out what happened to the Bulls the night before or for an upcoming game, they go to bulls.com and they get it right there. Every game, every day during the season. And it's a labor of love. So whether it's Bulls TV on the Bulls website, bulls.com for my daily column, the radio play-by-play, or speaking engagements, this is a lot more than just calling a game on the radio.
Extremely great words. I mean, for all my viewers, definitely check out Chuck Checks In. I've read it a couple times. It's phenomenal. And additionally, follow his Twitter. You got some great inspiration on there. And I thought it was really, really interesting that you talked about kind of the teamwork between you and Bill Wennington. I mean, he has his talents in terms of calling and you have yours. How do you know when you're going to kind of be quiet and let him step in? And just how does that develop, that cohesion over time?
Well, yeah, I think it's about chemistry and it's about respect. I mean, number one, our chemistry is really good off the air, and that really helps on the air because I respect and think the world of Bill. And it's been that way from day one. I actually knew Bill before I came to Chicago, which helped. But, that was very sporadic. But I respect, because Bill, people look at Bill and they know that he played on the NBA championship teams, 3 rings for the Bulls. But, he was the number 1 pick by Dallas. When he came out of St. John's in '85, he was a first-round draft pick. I think it was 15th overall by the Mavericks. I mean, we're not talking about a guy who was just, this guy was a McDonald's All-American. When everyone gets caught up now in McDonald's All-American, this, and this. I think Bill was one of the first, if not the first, McDonald's All-American teams when they put together with the sponsorship of McDonald's and high school talent. And then he went to St. John's. Bill was recruited by everybody in the country. And when I mean everyone, he was recruited by everyone. Duke came knocking on the door. Coach K went to his house and wanted him several times. Terry Holland, who was like one of the premier basketball coaches in the 80s with the University of Virginia, led by Ralph Sampson, And, Luke Harner II with St. John's got him because Bill was playing high school ball in Long Island. He didn't really, care to leave the New York metropolitan area. So he stayed and played for St. John's. But Bill could have gone anywhere in the country. I mean, he picked up the phone and said, hey, I want to play on the West Coast, or let it be known through his high school coach, hey, I have a desire to play on the West Coast. UCLA would have been knocking on the door and working. So it's just, it's a respect. Bill's played the game. He knows the game. He has fun. It's entertainment. But, Bill calls a great game because I learned something every game about the game. And to me, I have to pull that out of an analyst. With Bill, I don't have to pull that out because he shares that knowledge, which is a gift.
You're definitely a great team, and I surely enjoy listening. I mean, you could really tell when there is that cohesion, and with other teams, Chicago or kind of just around the country, it's not always that case. So as fans, you can't take it for granted.
No, you can't.
So obviously this has been a major offseason for the Chicago Bulls. I'm a fan myself. I haven't been this excited probably since the back end of like the Jimmy Butler era, when they put together the team with D Wade, Rondo, and you really thought they had something going. Rondo got hurt, but they could have. Who knows? What are your just thoughts on what they've done this offseason, bringing in Billy, and just where the franchise is going?
Well, very high on Arturas. I have never met Arturas. I know people who know him, and they think the world of him. And, of course, his pedigree with Denver, Houston, the league office speaks for itself. Mark Eversley, I do know from my time in Toronto when he first worked at Nike Canada, and then with the Raptors, and then he went on with Washington and Philadelphia, has an excellent reputation in the league. And then, of course, Billy Donovan. I mean, we all, respect Billy. So this is really, really good. And I mean, I'm very, very amped to see where this is going, because they do have a foundation of young players. Having said that, I think the canvas is like wide open. And, it's up to Arturas and Mark and Billy to see where this is, headed. But I'm very excited. I really am. I haven't been this excited since probably when Derek was entering his second and third year in the NBA, because what I saw out of Derrick Rose from his opening night, 2008 against Milwaukee at the United Center, up until that time with the ACL, unfortunately, in the playoff series against Philly. And then he came back, got hurt against Portland. And then his career, was just, it breaks my heart. And I'm glad to see him, starting to regain that level of excellence. But this is the first time I've really gotten fired up since early Derrick Rose years.
I'm right there with you. And seeing Derek put up 50 with the Pistons, it's phenomenal to see him getting back to that level.
Very true.
So just to end with a couple quick hits here. I mean, you have just countless memories. You've talked about so many legends today. You've been around just some of the best players in the history of the game. What's your favorite moment, kind of, whether that be at a game or meeting someone in a tunnel after a game? Can you just give me one or two?
Wow. Okay. Well, number one, we'll break things down. First with DePaul. I loved Coach Ray Meyer, and Joey is unbelievable. The Meyer family, very dear to my heart. There was something about Coach Ray that I loved talking with Coach Ray. And sometimes, a lot of times, it wasn't even about basketball. It was about life. It was about his experiences. It was about how he grew up. It was about his time when he was a student at Notre Dame. And I love Coach Ray so much. So that's one memory of DePaul. Michigan was fantastic because with DePaul, they had rivalries with Notre Dame and Marquette and Dayton. But for the most part, I really didn't know what a rivalry truly was until I broadcast Michigan games. And it was personal. I was just a broadcaster, but there were other Big Ten announcers, and I'm not going to lie to you, who treated me like I played or like I was a coach. And I'm thinking, hey, I'm just a broadcaster. And even though I love Michigan, I want them to win, you got to be kidding me. But it was so intense. And the rivalries, you know, Michigan would go into East Lansing and take on Michigan State. We go on the road in Bloomington to take on Bobby Knight and the Indiana Hoosiers. I mean, it was unbelievable. You go in the Mackey Arena, that place was rocking in West Lafayette and Purdue. And I could go right down the list, Carver, Hawkeye, and Iowa City. And so that's what I would take out of Michigan, is that Michigan's brand was unbelievable. And I loved living in Ann Arbor. So that's my college experience. My pro experience with Toronto was the growth of basketball. And I give the ownership of the Raptors a lot of credit. And Larry Tannenbaum, who's now the chairman of the board of governors of the NBA, one of the finest individuals I have ever met in or out of life, just like Jerry Reinsdorf of the Bulls. Cut from the same cloth. They are just great, great people. But seeing the Raptor franchise grow because of Carter and making the playoffs and seeing these two young kids, McGrady and Carter, you know, take it on the Knicks. And they got beaten that series 3-0. But, you know, I saw what was about to come with Vince. And seeing the Raptors grow and develop as a community, as a city, and just have it just go ballistic, you know, and everyone's like talking Raptor ball was awesome. And I have so much respect for the fan base, for the community, for the players who went through Toronto. With the Bulls, and I go way back, you know, when I first came to Chicago and saw different eras of basketball. But, you know, what can you say? I mean, as a community and as a city and as a franchise, we got spoiled watching Michael Jordan, the greatest player in team sports in the history of athletics. And I mean, I never like to compare because I don't think it's fair to anybody, but in my opinion, I've never seen anybody like Michael Jordan.
Just two more here. I mean, what's your favorite stadium that you've called in? You've been in some that have been retired, I'm sure, like the Palace of Auburn Hills. I mean, kind of just all over the country. What's just one that's memorable?
Well, I mean, Madison Square Garden in New York, even though the broadcast location isn't the best, but MSG, you know, you go into New York and you think of all these great players that played through there. So in the NBA level, you know, Madison Square Garden. College basketball, I've done games. Wow, I at Duke. I mean, Cameron is like fantastic. Fog Allen, Kansas. Those two probably in college basketball were two of my all-time favorites, without any question. I mean, the Rock Chalk Jayhawk on a Saturday night. Oh my gosh. And then Duke, you know, with Cameron Crazies, and they're bouncing up and down. So I was most fortunate.
I can't wait to get that back in a year or two. We'll see what happens. And then last question. I mean, you're known for some of your lines. You got to have them ringing through your ears at this point. You've said them so many times, but they're just phenomenal. So between a few, and I'll spell them out, I want to just know what's your favorite. Apollo 33 has landed when Jamario Moon's slamming one down.
Jamario Moon.
An extreme athlete. Oh my Bosh, in reference to Chris.
Yeah.
I know he's just, you know, such a Raptors legend and NBA as well. Onions, baby, onions.
Yeah.
That was my best impression of it, but that's a phenomenal one. And then lastly, salami and cheese, which I want to have one of those right after this.
Yeah.
So
good for you.
What's your favorite one?
Salami and cheese, because the Raptors won. And so that kind of caught on, and it turned into something that, I mean, there was such a huge ripple effect because I'll make it real brief. So we're we back in the early Raptor days, you know, the Raptors didn't win a lot of games, even though, you know, we had Vince, and then Vince got hurt. We kind of hit the wall, but we had a lot of faithful Raptor viewers. And I actually got a letter. It was not an email, it was a letter. And a guy writes and says, hey, listen, you know, Chuck, I'm locked in with the Raptors. Do me a favor, though. You know, when you think the Raptors have won a ball game, can you let me know, because I'm starving. I want to hit the refrigerator and get something to eat. And, you know, I love salami and cheese. So, you know, a couple games later, Raptors are winning by like 8 points with 14 seconds to go. He said, "Get out the salami and cheese, mama. This ball game is over."
Delfino, Parker, layup, turn it, foul. You can get out the salami and cheese, mama. This ball game is over. Raptors win, Raptors win. Get out the salami and cheese, mama. This ball game is over. There you go, folks. It's all good.
And I was doing TV. And the producer in the truck, he's talking to me in the ear. And he's going, "Hey, Chuck, what did you just say? Salami and cheese?" And I hit the mute button where the viewers couldn't hear me, but I was speaking back to the truck, and I said, I'll tell you later. Game gets over. I tell the producer. He said, "Wow, okay, whatever." Next day, the receptionist in Toronto is getting all these calls from people saying, "We love it." And as it turns out, that we had people that were bringing banners and signs to the game, salami and cheese. When the Raptors were up big and they cleared the bench and players would come in, is, "Chuck, have you called it yet? Have you called salami and cheese?" And then we had a pizza company sponsor. We had T-shirts, everything. It was
That's
fun.
such a fantastic story. I mean, I hope you were able to reconnect with the original sender. A letter goes very far, you know?
Yes, it does.
Yeah. I mean, and so I just want to have one question, one more thing before you end. I mean, kind of just on the note of a letter and just how that really hits different than an email, just more personal. What advice do you have to people looking to get into the sports industry, into radio? I mean, it's a grind for sure, and you've been through that yourself, but if you could just give a few words of wisdom here.
Well, everyone has a different journey. So if you were to put 10, 15 women and men who are in sports right now, management, broadcasting, whatever, all of us have a different story. All of us have a different journey. And that's the beautiful thing about life. We're not cookie cutters, there isn't one way to do this. But I'm going to share something with you, and it's really dear to my heart. Because everyone knows the basics. You have to have perseverance. You have to take a no and make it into a yes. And I want people to think about that. But I also want young people and even people who are in this business currently and have put together a nice portfolio and resume, but it still comes back to the basics of treating people the way we want to be treated. So when I still call people Mr. and Miss. I still open doors for people. I still say thank you and you're welcome. I still return phone calls. I still write back emails. I return texts, all these things, because I think manners all of a sudden have been completely sometimes tossed out the door. And when you do that and you throw your heart out the window, then that's when we've lost sense of who we are as people. And that's why I'm really big on manners and politeness and appreciation. And I'm also big into encouragement. I tell my wife all the time this. I think we've lost somewhere along the line, we've lost the beauty of telling people how much they're appreciated. We have put a wall around ourselves and not revealed who we are for whatever reason. And I just wish we took the time to acknowledge people for helping us get through a typical day. Life is tough. Life is not a straight line. There are some good days, there are some tough days. There are unexpected issues that come up out of nowhere. You could be having a great day and all of a sudden you get a call at 11:30 from the boss, or you get something that happens with a family member and it throws you on a loop. And so you got to deal with that. But at the end of the day is how do you want to be treated? And I think all of us want to be treated with respect. And so I'm all about treating people with respect. And so that's what I would say. I mean, you got to work hard. You got to have a skill set. You got to persevere, all these things. But at the end of the day, we have to really understand that we're still in a people business. And that's the way you go about treating people as people.
I mean, everybody heard that. It was really deep and absolutely just phenomenal advice. I agree with you. It's definitely kind of a lost art. And I really appreciate you taking the time to come on this. I mean, it's been an absolute pleasure. You're so responsive in terms of your emails, and I know you have so many other things you can be doing, but thank you so much for really taking the time. And I hope to my viewers here, I hope everybody enjoyed. I hope more than that you took something that you're going to learn and, you know, just do something in your life moving forward that came from this interview. And that's really all we want. So thank you so much, Chuck. I really appreciate it.
My pleasure. Great job. Thank you.